All righty. Welcome in. We are back. So I am really excited to be back here. I wanted to try something new. First of all, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name is Dr. Vincent Esposito. We've had almost 100 different videos, I think, here on YouTube, and that doesn't count all of our private cooking demos, everything in between. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for tuning in because today we're talking about chaga mushrooms. Now, this is going to be the introduction of sort of like a new live podcast. My idea with this is to kind of go over, get as detailed as we can with no fluff on a variety of different health topics. I know a lot of podcasts are long. My goal is with each of these episodes to keep them 10 to 15 minutes long. Whether you can use them for your ride home, maybe your ride to work, in and out, you kind of get what you need in a succinct kind of way, and hopefully you find it useful. My goal here is to record these live here on YouTube and then just kind of use them and potentially turn them into a podcast where you can listen at home. So this one's going to be a little bit longer because it's kind of a reintroduction. But we're going to get started with it right now. And our first episode is actually going to be the episode we were going to continue with on the art of eating, and that was Chaga Mushroom. That was the episode that we were going to release next before we decided to end the podcast. And I figured it was kind of a natural place to start since I actually had all the prep work done. I just never really shared it. So we're going to start with Chaga Mushrooms. We were kind of in the middle of a mushroom kind of phase in terms of going over all the different medicinal mushrooms and like different things, but we want to go over, all the different things, all different benefits you might be able to find with chaga mushrooms. And, hopefully you find it interesting. So I will continue and just go through all these notes and we'll be in and out. So Inonotus obliquus, that is the name for chaga mushrooms. It's actually a fungus that grows on birch trees. You're going to see it in northern Canada. You can find it in Alaska, but it's generally found in Siberia. Now, interestingly, chaga is actually referred to as a mushroom, but it's really not a mushroom. And a lot of botanists don't even really classify it as such, which is, kind of interesting. If you, Google a picture of what a chaga mushroom looks like, it is very interesting. It almost looks like burnt bark, like tree bark to some degree from the outside, but it has this kind of like yellow orange hue on the inside. But the secrets of chaga mushroom have been around for a really long time. It really started with Siberians, indigenous Siberians. They actually ground it down into a powder. They would add it to stews and stoops. They thought it would boost endurance and stave off degenerative diseases. Pretty cool. Now, chances are you've heard of chaga mushroom because it is really popular in a lot of mushroom coffees, mushroom teas, and there's a lot of different health benefits that come along with chaga mushrooms. Now, traditionally in Eastern Europe, when they used it in these stews and teas, it was mostly for skin conditions, eczema, or respiratory disorders, things like bronchitis. What we found is chaga really kind of came around in the 16th century. That's when it started popping up in Russian Siberian texts. Again, some other uses along with skin disorders, eczema, bronchitis, also gastric ulcers and gastritis. It was thought that chaga could be helpful when it comes to intestinal pain, any sort of stomach disturbances. And what we found with modern medicine is that the reason chaga is so helpful is really because it is such a super, super potent antioxidant. In fact, it has one of the highest Orac scores of any food out there on the planet, which is kind of crazy per unit weight. So it was really, really cool for that. Hunters used to take advantage of chaga because it would be used to kind of boost energy and would also help alleviate hunger during their kind of hunting bouts. So, really, really interesting to get it to kind of see the history and kind of see all that kind of borne out in, science today, which is really, really cool. So what are some of those benefits? Well, let's start with talking about some of the constituents of chaga because that's really kind of where this stuff starts, right? So a lot of the beneficial effects of chaga tend to come from a variety of different components. Some of them are beta glucans. There's different types of polysaccharides. There's phytosterols. There's triproteins, things like botulin and betulinic acid actually give chaga some of its therapeutic benefits. So there are other compounds like ergosterol peroxide. Now, ergosterol peroxide specifically has been shown to have anti-tumor, anti-inflammatory, antiviral, and immunosuppressive capabilities. Now, these have all been kind of shown in the lab, but when you take some of those components out as part of kind of a whole system, really kind of interesting. Chaga is also actually known as an adaptogen. Now, adaptogens are kind of this class of herbs that are known to either, you know, modulate our stress response, optimize it really. So if you have to bring it up, you can bring it up. If you have to bring it down, you could bring it down to reach that level of homeostasis. Chaga is one of those different types of herbs or plant medicines, I guess, as we should say, that can do that, which is really, really, really cool. So, kind of want to get that out there. Now, research has demonstrated that chaga can both stimulate the immune response and reduce inflammation, which is different because most medications will typically do one or the other and have kind of other side effects. So, showing that you can enhance an immune response while also reducing inflammation, that's going to be giving you the biggest bang for your buck. So, that's really important. As I mentioned before, chaga is a super, super potent antioxidant. A lot of the antioxidant potential in chaga is given to a compound known as superoxide dismutase, which is an enzyme that is found in chaga. Now, SOD, which is what you can shorten it as, it can neutralize damage done by free radicals. It protects against the aging process, and obviously brings in antioxidant capacity that can help with liver detoxification, prevent cellular damage from oxidizing species, reactive oxygen species. So, really, really helpful on that. In fact, what's interesting is, like I mentioned, it has one of the highest Orac scores out there, and it's 50 times more than things like leafy greens, like truffles, like sea vegetables, things like berries. Kind of crazy because those are some of what we consider the highest ORAC foods out there. And chaga outperforms and outclasses all of them, which is pretty crazy. Now, we mentioned that chaga mushroom can be helpful when it comes to the immune system, modulating the immune system, optimizing the immune system response. Now, what we found in some studies, particularly animal studies, is chaga mushrooms can help boost the immune system. And this is done by increasing the production of certain immune cells, things known as interleukin 6 and T lymphocytes. So, when these are optimized, we have better immune system function. Also, found in certain research that chaga extracts can stimulate spleen lymphocytes, which can then positively affect the immune system. So, if we're getting those lymphocytes in numbers that are appropriate in a certain situation, that's how we can kind of correlate that to, is it going to be helpful systemically for our immune system? So, hope that makes sense. Also, chaga has some antiviral properties. So, taking chaga extracts has shown cytostatic and cytotoxic effects. In other words, it can either halt cell growth if it's needed. If there are detrimental cells, it could also kill cells that are either non-human, or maybe they're viral, or maybe it's some sort of other pathogen that it can be really helpful. It can kind of halt those processes, shut them down as they're going along to enhance our health. This is kind of what we thought gives chaga, those polysaccharides in chaga mushrooms, well, not really mushrooms, but chaga, some broad antiviral activity. Whereas, many times in, say, the pharmaceutical space, we have like specific antivirals. A lot of these medicinal herbs and plant medicines, they tend to be a bit more broad spectrum. So you kind of can cover a wider range with some of these, which is really, really cool. Shows how much the body can adapt. Really interesting. Chaga is also known for its energy boosting effects. So it can actually help improve endurance, physical endurance. Whether you're an athlete, whether you're performing in a sport, whether it's to just simply boost in energy levels. What they found is these polysaccharides found in chaga mushrooms. Check this out. So there was a study they did on mice in 2015. These mice were able to swim longer. They found that there was more glycogen delivered to both the liver and muscles. Now, remember, we use those glucose stores. We need that in our muscles to kind of continue to work over time. But interestingly, even though we're getting, more glucose to cells, we're also delaying or limiting the amount of lactic acid buildup in the bloodstream. So you're actually able to recover faster and fatigue less. And those are both signs of better endurance. So really cool, if you're an athlete, whether you compete competitively, chaga is something that's really useful to look into because of those benefits. So really, really interesting there. Along kind of with the benefits that we find with the antioxidant effects of chaga mushroom inflammation. Chaga has very, very powerful anti-inflammatory effects. So really interesting what this has done. It actually can help combat invading pathogens, which is really interesting. Also helps limit chronic inflammation. Now, remember, when you have chronic inflammation, this is going to lead to cellular damage. It is going to lead to kind of the inflammatory cascade kind of going on. It's kind of unchecked, and when you have this kind of chronic inflammation, that's where you're going to get things like joint pain, maybe issues, with the liver, pancreas. It could go on and on. So, interestingly, those compounds like the betulinic acid actually help reduce inflammation in the body, which is really, really interesting. That's what some of these studies have found, that compound specifically, which is found in chaga mushroom, can reduce systemic inflammation, which is good. It's going to help with recovery and everything in between. Interestingly, so histamine, if you have any sort of, say, allergic reactions, histamines are usually involved in some way. Now, what's interesting is that this study, what another animal study showed, that using chaga mushrooms actually helped reduce histamine-induced inflammation, and it actually decreased the vasodilation response. So, in other words, taking this chaga mushroom actually helped normalize the histamine response a little bit, so it wasn't as overactive. Maybe perhaps you weren't either sneezing or having some other allergic response because of the chaga mushroom. So really, really interesting. Also, they found that chaga mushroom can help repair some of the gut mucosa damage in the colon, in the large intestine. And we know, particularly when it comes to allergies and other autoimmune type responses, having a response, having some sort of inflammation is going to be an issue. Chaga can help repair some of that damage, and when we have a healthier gut, we tend to have a healthier response systemically, particularly when it comes to allergies and autoimmune type symptomatology. Now, when it comes to heart health, we already talked about the energy boost that you can get from chaga, but also it can help support healthy blood cholesterol and triglyceride levels. And now this is probably due to a combination of its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory nature. And again, the betulinic acid, which is found in chaga, has been shown to help break down LDL cholesterol and help utilize it in a more efficient way. So really cool there. And this kind of dovetails really nicely into the anti-cancer properties that you find in chaga mushroom. Now, again, antioxidants are going to help limit free radical damage. When you have that, that's less damage to DNA, and we know that with cancer cells, they tend to replicate kind of uncontrollably, right? So with chaga, you're actually getting less of that carcinogenic kind of response. So what they found is, in one study, again done on mice here, those who supplemented with chaga mushroom, they actually experienced a 60% tumor size reduction compared to the control group that only had a 25% decrease in nodules, which you're talking about over twice as effective as the control, which is really, really incredible if you think about it. Now, what they find is, again, the antioxidant capacity of chaga mushroom tends to be why it potentiates some of these anti-cancer effects, which is really, 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 really cool. So whether you're going through, a traditional route of conventional cancer therapy, something like chaga mushroom can be a useful adjunct. So really interesting there. Also, we kind of talked about digestion a little bit. One thing that chaga mushroom can actually do is stimulate bile production. So we need bile to help break down foods, particularly fats, once they enter the small intestine. So if chaga mushroom can stimulate bile production, we can help break down fats more efficiently. That and when they're broken down more efficiently, that tends to enhance our ability to absorb them. Now, this is really important, obviously, with different types of fatty acids, but also fat soluble vitamins, things like A, D, E, and K. Really cool. Interestingly, chaga can also be helpful for skin health. Why? Now, chaga actually has a really high melanin content. Now, you might have heard of melanin before because that is what gives us kind of our skin pigment, right? So, with that, you know, melanin also has super powerful antioxidant properties. And because of that, it helps protect DNA and genes from damage, which is really, really cool. And again, another reason, probably because if you look at chaga, it has a really kind of dark, almost black color, black bark on the outside. It also then can be helpful when it comes to protecting the skin, but also the hair from sun damage. Now, we've talked about this before, and this is going to come up on the show again, but one of the best ways to protect our skin, it's not going to be necessarily sunscreen all the time. It's going to be, having enough antioxidants. Are you giving your body the tools it needs? The vitamins A, C, and E, the selenium, the zinc, the antioxidants you need to, you know, repel some of that damage, absorb some of that, and then, you know, deal with it efficiently. And you need a good amount of antioxidants to do so. So I thought you've hoped, or I hope you found this episode really helpful. If you want different types of things to cover on this show, please let me know. I am going to be working on getting this into a podcast form. It's going to be cut into kind of that 15 minutes that I just did. With that, though, if you're looking for good extracts, since I know there's a question in the comments here, kind of depends on the person and what you're looking for. What I can say is, if you go to my website, insideouthealthandwellness.com, there are two different companies that I like. One actually does alcohol extracts, and that's called Life Cycle Mushrooms. You can get 10% off using code Dr. Vincent 10 at checkout, and you can check that out on my website. There's a link there. The other one I really like is Real Mushrooms. Now, they tend to be powder extracts. You could also get 10% off there using code Dr. Vin. That's DRVIN at Real Mushrooms. You could find that again on my website in my shop at InsideOutHealthWellness.com. So, alcohol extracts, some people are little sensitive to alcohol or simply don't want that. So that's when powders would come in. Generally speaking, alcohol extracts tend to be a little bit more absorbable. Liquids tend to be a bit more absorbable than powders. And then capsules kind of depends on the capsule, but um, powders can be good. It's really going to, the key is, are they using high quality, extracts at the end of the day? And then what is their extraction process? So Real Mushrooms and Life Cycle in particular are really spot on with how they source their ingredients, which is really, really important. And that to me is always key. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to be cutting this up and maybe chopping up certain clips that I'll throw onto IG. My plan is to do this a few times a week. If you want to work with me, if you want to schedule a consult, again, you go to my website, insideouthealthwellness.com. You can check out those mushrooms also there. I want to thank all of you for your support here today. Again, this is the start of something new. I wanted to do maybe a live podcast. It might be a little bit more interesting, but thank you, like I said, for tuning in. We'll be coming back with hopefully multiple different episodes a week. If you have any, please send me a message either through email or on Instagram for future episode ideas. More than happy to cover certain ones. We'll dive into specific kind of health issues or processes kind of as we go along. And again, the goal of the show is going to be helping empower you becoming your healthiest self. And that's ultimately the goal. So thank you for tuning in. Much love. I will see you guys soon. Have a good one.